So I'm going to expand from the last video in which I introduced to you the concept of objects. And in this video, we're going to create our very own object using a new class. So here, I'm just going to declare and assign a brand new object. This is going to be called time1. It's going to be of the type time. And I'm just going to type in new time. Now, of course, we have errors. If I hover over here, I have two options. I can either import and use the Java time, or I can create my own class time. I don't want to use the Java time, I want my own. So I can either click there, or I can click here, or I can right click here under new and then class. And here I have to type in time. The name of the class has to be the exact same as the name of the object that you've given. So I'm just going to hit finish. Now, just like the point object had the X and Y attributes, the time class is also going to have some attributes. And those are going to be hour, minute, and second. Now, the first thing you might be wondering is, why are we using private? This is the first time I've actually shown the use of the keyword private over public. The reason is because we're creating a new object and we can have multiple instances of objects. You can create more than one. We don't want to be accidentally accessing these variables, so we just pop on private just to be safe. Now, as you can see, we've got some warnings here. If I just hover over, then one of the solutions is to create a getter and a setter, and that's what I'm going to do. This is so we can safely access these variables, and you'll hopefully remember that with the point we did have getX and setLocation, so that's essentially what these do. And I'm just going to generate these for all of them. And these methods don't really need a comment because they're extremely self-explanatory. Now, the last thing we need to finish off this object is a constructor. The constructor is essentially a method that says, hey, this object is being created, what do you want to do? So if I go back into main here, when I say new time, that's essentially just running a method called time. So in time, let's create a public time. Now you notice there's no void or int or whatever, and that's what tells Java, right, this is a constructor. It also has to be the exact same name as your class. Now, constructors can also have parameters, so when I define a time, I want to be able to give it an hour, give it a minute, give it a second. So I'm going to just type in here int hour, int minute, and int second. Now, as soon as I do that, main gives me an error. I'm being thrown an error because I haven't given this an hour, minute, and second. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to define 9:15, so 9:45, oh. 9:15, quarter to 10 on the dot. There we go. Now if I hop back in, I need to actually do something with these parameters. I can't just run an empty constructor. And there's two things I can do here. The first, I can do this.hour equals hour, and do that for all of these. And what this essentially does is get the hour that's of this class and set it to the hour that we've been given here. Or I can just simply write set hour, and use the internal hour method here, because that just essentially does the same thing, as you can see there. It's up to you really which one you want to do. So now I have my constructor. Now let's say I'm in a scenario where I want to define a time object, but I don't know what time I want to give it yet. I just want to give it a default value and then maybe come back to it later to give it some values. What I can do is, overloading is not only just a thing with methods, but I can also overload constructors. So I can define a second constructor here, except with empty parameters. And here, I'm just going to set hour to 0, and minute and second also to 0. I'm just going to set midnight as the default time here. So if I then hop back into main, and we're pretty much done with the time class now, if I hop into here, I want to create a second time instance. And here, I'm not going to define any parameters, and that's okay. What this is then going to do is going to go, okay, this one is just going to be equal to midnight. And again, like with the points, I can use the set methods that we created to change the attributes. So let's say time1.setHour, I misread the time zone. I'm actually meant to be an hour ahead on this time. So I can just get the hour and then add +1, and that would do the job. That would make it 11:15, 10:45. Let's now say for time 2, I now have an idea of the minute I want to give it, so I can just simply set minute and give it that absolute value of 30. Now I've created some very elaborate println statements, and these are essentially going to give me the 2 times in a nice little format. So if I just hit run here, then I get exactly as I wanted. I have my quarters to 11 here, and I have my midnight right here.